Hello. For anyone who hasn't been here before, I do a little quick talk at the start, but I'll talk about that in a second. So welcome, How We Listen Live, the knowledge to move your music forward. And here's the agenda. So I do this every time. I talk a bit about Beta for people who don't know what Beta is. Then I talk about how we listen, which is the sort of the foundation of where these events come from. Then I do some announcements about what we have coming up. And then part two is the reason everybody comes, and that's for the chat. And today we've got Mike Warner. So I'm Mark Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Beta, and this accent's Canadian, not American. I lived in the UK, London for 18 years. And then I live in Sweden, where it's -5, even though it looks sunny in the background. And as I do every time, and I think it's super important to repeat, when you're watching interviews and talks with people, it's good to get a handle on what their background is, to figure out what their perspective is on what they're talking about, because there are loads of different ways of looking at the music ecosystem. So I started pre-internet world at a small artist-run label in Canada. Then I moved to the UK. I worked in the A&R department at Creation Records, which was one of the most legendary, if not the most legendary, indie label of the 80s and 90s in the UK. Then I moved to another smaller label called Pop Tones, where I started doing radio promotion, which is just like press or playlisting, which we're going to talk about today, but trying to get songs on the radio. So people hired me to go to radio stations in the UK. Then I was actually sort of pretty good with that. I had some good luck. And so I started my own independent radio and TV promotion company, which I ran for years. Then through that, I got the idea for Beta. And then I moved to Sweden. And we run Beta as a distributed team from all over the world. So we've got, on this call, we got people from Montreal and Southampton outside of London, and me. We've got people in Australia, other parts of Canada. But what is Beta if you don't know what it is? Beta is the platform that enables sending and receiving of digital audio in a clean, simple, and secure way, built for everyone working with music today. And what does that mean? It basically means fast and secure audio sharing. And the way we explain what Beta is and what the key features are that we take advantage of audiophiles' unique properties. And there are three that we always focus on talking about. First, metadata. We talk about metadata a lot. There's lots of different kinds, but there's embedded file metadata, and that's the information that's embedded in your audio files. And Beta enables you to pull all that out, display it on the screen, so you can make sure it's up to date and update the files. So we read and write metadata. Next is we focus on file formats and audio quality. So you can upload in one file format and share in another. You want to share streams, you can do that. You want to have increased security, you can do that. Any way you need to share, you can do it in Beta instead of using a series of different apps. And then the third, and basically very important, is streamability. We have fast yet secure streaming, which means you can't rip our links. So if you're worried about sharing audio and maybe it ending up with somebody you don't want to hear it right away, Beta's for you. But then, Beta's a tool, that's easy to understand. But we also have a mission statement, which is to provide artists and their teams with the tools and the knowledge to move their careers forward. So what does that mean? Beta, the tool, simple to understand, right? But the knowledge, we realized a lot of people want to learn how to do things better, best practices, learn the way the music ecosystem works. And so that's why we started How We Listen, which is the knowledge side of our company. And what is How We Listen? How We Listen is an interview series where we talk to people about how they discover, listen, and experience new music. And so this started out as a simple series of 10 questions. We do it every week where people would talk about how they find and listen to new music. And that developed into a much bigger sort of education platform, which comes from this idea that all the obvious ways that people find and listen to music according to, say, a streaming platform isn't necessarily the case. It's not just that algorithms are your savior. You put your music up on Spotify or Apple Music and everything just happens. Or getting on top of a playlist is the only thing you need to succeed. It's much more nuanced. And these How We Listen interviews show that everybody's doing different things to find new music. And there's lots of themes, but the key for us is that everyone needs to be thinking about doing as much as they can in different areas to move their careers forward. So here's an example of an interview, a recent one with Hannah Firth. And Hannah says, I get sent a lot of music and I listen to most of it, but there's just so much out there. Every artist is fighting for everyone else's attention. I discover new music mostly through gigs, I'd say. Nothing better than seeing it live and just becoming entranced. So again, exactly what I'm saying. If you put all your energy into playlists and streaming, you miss out on the fact that a lot of people like to experience gigs. And so these interviews help you to think, okay, well, how am I going to get my music out there? What works for me? What's important for me? So Mandy Zaw had another good one as well. And this relates to metadata. Every time my music is about to be released or on release day, something always happens. And Mike, we should talk about this. Something always happens where either my name or some metadata is wrong, and my team has to scramble and email all the different platforms or the distributor to change it. So I talk a lot about timelines. I love talking about timelines, and I love talking about being organized and getting all your information in place in advance. And this is why. And so Mandy, actually, this is from a Method to My Music interview, which we started a second series, which is more artist production focused, where artists talk about their studio practices, all that kind of stuff. And so that's where this interview comes from. Jamie will throw some links in the chat. And then we have a third series that we probably started nearly a year ago now. And it's an interview series where we get a friend of Beta to write about an issue that they understand and know particularly well. So insights into their challenges, successes, and passion topics in sort of the day-to-day world of digital. And so the most recent one is from Marco at Music Mismatch. And so Music Mismatch is all about Music's Match. I say it wrong, sorry. Creators have embraced this ecosystem too. Lyrics aren't just the words for the song. They're the store window to a new audience that can break an artist or song. And understanding how to utilize them is key to every artist wanting to make a deeper connection with their fans in the modern music industry. And I'm actually going to throw something out here. I use Spotify, and that lyrics feature is the best thing ever. Like, I sit on the tube here and I read the lyrics while I'm listening. But I want to ask, does anybody know, can you get the lyrics up on release day? Because I notice new tracks almost always or almost never seem to have lyrics on the first day. So if anybody knows, can they answer in the chat? And then hopefully I'll remember to ask Mike, because I'm fascinated by that. Because I just think lyrics on Spotify are brilliant. So How We Listen Live, what is it and why are we doing it? Well, basically, the interview series is great, but we also realize that we get a lot of interesting people doing these things, writing articles, digital dialogue, and there are certain issues that we always want to do a deep dive on. So this is a way for everybody to get together, join on the same call, add questions, comments, get feedback from other artists, other people who work in music. And so this is just an extension of what we like to do with How We Listen. And it's a great thing to do every month. And, you know, it's great that the guests are willing to donate their time. And on that front, no one gets paid to do this. We all volunteer our time. And in exchange, what we do is we throw a little money to Maytree, which is a house for people who are feeling suicidal in London in the UK. And that's a super important issue to me and to us and to, well, to everyone, especially mental health in music, in the music ecosystem. So screenshot that if you want, take a look, read about it. And if you ever have any money, feel free to make a donation or donate to a local charity doing the same thing. It all helps. This is my website where I have all my, it's getting redesigned. It's where you can get a hold of me, all my details. It's going to have a list of all the events I do because I seem to be doing more and more events. So that's coming soon. We also have a Facebook group. This really depends on how you like to get your info. So I know everybody, just like Discovering Music, everybody has a way of doing things. So some people like to be in Facebook groups to get notifications about stuff. We post regularly, but not super often, with information about what we're up to. In this, there's email newsletter, sure, Twitter, all those kind of social stuff. But whatever you like to do, this is just another way to do it, even if you have questions you want to ask. YouTube channel, the reason I mention this is that the way this works, you come to the event, you subscribe, you show up. A couple days later, you're going to get a link from Beta with the audio, just a light edit. Then we put it up on YouTube as well, and then we put it out on streaming platforms as a podcast. So if people want to listen again, or they miss something, or they miss the event, that's the way to do it. You can just sign up for the event. You're going to get all the information. That also means, I should say, that you don't need to be worried about taking notes. So if there's loads of information that you think, oh, I should be writing this down, you can watch it again. So feel free to relax and pick up the information later if you want. Now, a couple other things that we've got going on. We're working with some friends at Paradise, a distributor in Germany, and we're doing a couple events with them called Africa Music is Rising. It's a 3-part series with Beta and a conference down in South Africa called ARMC. And so the first one is on Thursday. And if anybody wants to sign up and come, feel free to do so. Jamie will throw the link in the chat. We find that we do more and more stuff with people in Africa. We have people coming to these events. We've had people on from at least once or twice. So this is super fun for us, and those people at Paradise are great. So we're really looking forward to that. This is something, I don't know if we've talked about this before. We do a little one-day course on all things digital, or lots of things digital, with CD Baby. We did one a month ago. It was amazing. It's super fun. We're going to be doing another one soon. We haven't announced it yet. Jamie will throw a link in the chat. It's free. It's like 4 sessions. It's long, but it never feels long. But it's, 4-hour-long sessions. It's brilliant. It's super fun. I love doing it. Especially the chat is amazing. So yeah, Jamie will throw a link in there. Check that out. And then the next event, which we always announce at these events, is with Obina Agawu, an A&R executive at Forest Music in Nigeria. And yes, that's the next one. So signing, developing, and releasing music from Africa to the world. And that's Tuesday, the 25th, 5 p.m. British Standard Time. I'm assuming Jamie's got a link. I think that's all I have for now. So let me turn this off. Bear with. I forgot to throw up my details, but I'll throw them in the chat after. But people, you can get me on LinkedIn, email, Instagram. I'm pretty good on. I appreciate. But where is Mike? Is Mike? There he is. Oh, there you go. Hello.
Hey, Mark. Hey, everyone.
Let's start with the most important thing. Can you show us how your camera works? This is amazing. Please, can you pace?
Okay. The microphone's here, though. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
But...
Okay. Mike's walking away. He that's amazing. I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous of your what's it called? What's the feature called?
It's in the latest update for iPhones and Mac OS. It's called Continuity Camera. So if you have both Apple devices and you enable it, it's a native feature that's in the latest update. But it's cool because they've had it in, and also where it follows me, it's called Center Stage.
Okay.
And so when I call my parents back home, no longer am I staring at, their stomach or something like that because they don't know that they're on camera. It keeps them centered. Like it's a tough job, but it works. So they love it. And then you'll find they're always playing with it, doing this. So yeah, it's fun.
Do you feel more authoritative when you're center stage?
I kind of the opposite. I feel like I can't hide,
Oh,
there'll be a moment
yeah.
where you just want to duck down and just be like, and of course the camera will follow you. So you can't hide.
Maybe I won't install it then. Maybe I won't install it. So what your parents then, like where did you, because you're in California, right?
Yep.
And
just like you by the background, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a little further. What is it? West Hawaii. I'm in Hawaii actually. That's but where did you grow up then?
I grew up in Australia, but I've been living here in the US 8 years.
Okay, and so like, did you start working in music in Australia? What's the lowdown on that?
Yeah, I was always involved in music one way or another, but as it does, it continued to change. What I thought I loved and what I thought I was going to do would just keep changing over time. Back as a 20-year-old, I just wanted to DJ and tour the world and live out of a suitcase and play music. And then fast forward now, 20 years later, I couldn't think of anything worse than living out of a suitcase. Like if I travel, I want to go and see some things and eat some food and spend time with people. So yeah, was that a way of asking me to give you a little background or a little story there? Because I just kind of went 20 years back and 20 years forward in 20 seconds.
Well, yeah, sort of. I'm like, because I always, well, usually like when we have people on, everybody is always pretty curious about how people ended up doing what they're doing now. So so like you were making music or what's the lowdown?
Sure. So when I first started, I was DJing. I did a weekend-long crash course in DJing, and it's not like I'm a DJ. It was following that was a year and a half of loading up my car with equipment, driving it to venues, setting it up so other DJs could perform, and then spending time afterwards practicing and learning from them by being able to be on the stage, just observing, and then packing up the equipment and driving it back. And after about a year and a half of doing that, I finally got my first gig, and they handed me a microphone and said, "We don't need a DJ, but you know how to talk. Here's a microphone. You're going to be the MC. You're going to announce drink specials. You're going to encourage people to dance." And I'm like, I don't even really dance myself. That's why I like the idea of being a DJ. I can hide behind all this equipment and people just see this much. But yeah, then I did that. And then eventually a DJ ended up, something happened and they couldn't play last minute. And I was like, I've got my bag with my headphones and my music. And it kind of happened from that point on. And over the course of probably about 5 years, I played every venue in my hometown, which sounds like a brag, but it's a small town where I grew up, and there was only one nightclub and a lot of bars. And so I was looking at it and I realized, what do I do now? I would love to travel and perform in other states and other cities. So I got into music production, and started producing music with my friend. And then that led to us flying around the country and performing shows, which was great. And then it got to the point where we realized the music we're making is different now. We're not making like music for nightclubs and music festivals. We're making music that you could just listen to. We're creating an album that blends together different genres. And no record labels were interested in the music we were making at the time. So that led to us going independent. And I feel like this story could take up the whole hour unless I sort of
Yeah.
jump ahead.
No, that's
sessions
fine. Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
But from going independent with music, it also happened to be around the same time that I met my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife immediately, but my now wife of 8 years. And I moved to the US and wasn't working when I first got here, didn't have right to work, didn't have my green card yet or anything like that. And so I started spending all my time researching streaming music and looking at all of these platforms that were popping up. Spotify was still relatively new in Australia, so people weren't paying attention to it as much as, of course, they are nowadays. And I just started going down this different path of, instead of trying to secure DJ gigs and perform, I was looking at it from the other side and going, we have this music that needs to reach more people. There has to be ways that we can do this. And so I started doing a lot of outreach, which I'm sure we're going to get into in more detail.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things changed from just putting out music for myself and my friends to sharing all of these learnings and helping other artists and anyone else that was willing to listen. And yeah, I'm kind of cutting it up in little sections here in the interest of everyone's time. I don't want to spend the whole hour telling my life story, but as for currently where I'm at today, and then maybe we can go backwards if questions come up. But up until last year, I was working. Throughout all of this, I've always had a day job. I've always done music on the side. It's always been a passion. And even with the book and everything else like that, I've always had a day job because I just love coming on and sharing. And so until last year, I was working with a company called Chartmetric, who provide music data and analytics to artists, labels, music supervisors, streaming platforms, and almost anyone in the industry. And late last year, I started working with a company called Believe. And so Believe provides services to artists and labels in addition to distribution, without working with, I'm trying to figure the right way to word that now. I've forgotten my elevator pitch. Essentially, we provide services to artists and labels in addition to distribution. So it could be things relating to editorial opportunities, playlists, additional marketing opportunities, and just ways that we can help that artist to get heard and grow their following and reach more people, in addition to just pitching it for a playlist.
And like, I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's sort of interesting. So like a normal like independent artist has many ways that they can release music, but like a company like Believe doesn't necessarily work with newer, smaller artists. They work with companies that have a larger catalog, be that a management company or a record label, and then you all are actively helping them grow that catalog. Is that a good way of explaining it?
That's a good way of explaining it, and I might steal part of that.
Feel free.
You know, in all fairness, there's to just mention the different options as well. You know, if you're an artist and you just want to pay a fee and get your music on streaming platforms, there's DistroKid, there's CD Baby, there's TuneCore, there's a number of them out there where you can do that. And then, you know, once again, out of fairness to mention others as well, then there's companies that will provide services on top of that. So you've got like The Orchard, InGrooves, and Believe. And so those services are, you know, in addition to just getting the music in the stores, having access to a team that can do additional things for you as well and help you to find additional opportunities for your music.
Because I think like, so when I was a radio plugger, that's essentially what it is that people come to someone who has more skills in a certain area and is constantly talking to people in that part of the business or whatever. And I think it's good for artists and people who are new to the sort of the music business to understand that that's sort of the competition, that there are people that are actively working things at all times. So I just think it's super interesting that you have all this very good artist knowledge, and then you're using that in a different way in your day job, but it's the same theories, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the perfect fit, really, because I've spent all these years from doing this myself and sharing everything I've learned with other artists to actually being part of a team and being able to implement this, but also learn about what's coming and find other things that I wasn't as familiar with. And it's funny because there's things I get excited about that other people don't know why, or at least initially. And I'll find myself explaining it. I mean, my wife, she doesn't work in music at all. And I'll explain something and she'll do her best to be interested. But, you know, and I've had that with artists where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're releasing this new feature that does this. You need to do it right now. This is so cool. And they're like, what? I don't get it. And so to be part of a team where I have other people that also get that and get excited about it a little prematurely, like I do, has been so much fun, because it's like, we know exactly what we can do with this. We know exactly how this can benefit. Now we just need to pace ourselves and find a way to effectively utilize this and communicate it in a way that it makes sense and it doesn't just sound like us being way too excited about something. So that's been a lot of fun.
But what I think is good about what we can talk about is and because this comes up every month, basically, the fact that there are all these things to understand and know, and it's not even, for a lot of people, it's not even what's coming in 3 months. It's like, okay, what's out there now? What can I do to sort of get my situation going? And there's quite a lot that I want to discuss, but I like, is basically the situation that you started finding all these things that you were interested in, learning as you go, and then did you just decide, I'm going to write a book? It's like, I think I don't play music, and nor have I written a book, but I always think writing a book would be way harder than making music, maybe because music's more familiar to me. So can you explain the book so that we can sort of use that as a jumping off point, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. So going back to the part of the journey where I moved to the US and was very hands-on doing all of this myself, we didn't, when I say we, it's myself and two friends back in Australia. Our group is called Date Night, exactly like it sounds. So we were doing everything ourselves, and I had a lot of free time to do research, send a lot of emails, make a lot of mistakes, learn about a lot of things. And as we started to have various wins, if you will, there were other artists that were coming up to me and they were just saying, how did you do that? How did you get that? How did that happen? And at the time in my day job, I was traveling 5 hours per day in the car. For anyone that's not familiar, I was driving from Orange County to Santa Monica and back every day for an 8-hour-a-day day job and spending 5 hours in the car because of the hours that I worked. And so people would ask me questions and I would be sitting there and I would use the voice assistant in my phone, whose name I won't say right now, but it begins with S and it rhymes with and I would say, hey, S, take a note. And I would give my response verbally, and then that note would be saved on my phone and I would email that to the person who asked me the question. And it would usually be detailed step by step. Here's why this is important. Here's what you need to do. Go here, do this. And then this is exactly what I did. And it worked for us. And over time, I kept all these notes, and a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you just put all of those notes into a book? You've already kind of got it. And I was thinking to myself that there's so many books out there about music, and why do we need another one in the world? But then it was pointed out that there wasn't one that was specifically focused around streaming. There's a lot of really good books that are focused about a general understanding of the music industry, or they also go into publishing and contracts and things like that. So then I decided to just put it together, make it a PDF, put it online, and put it out, and quickly realized that people think that a PDF online means that it's a funnel, or you're trying to get them into something else, or they don't value it until there's actually a price tag on it. And so then I set myself up as a publisher, purchased the ISBNs and self-published it because I figured if I'm independently releasing music, I should independently release a book. And after taking the actual book and putting it into people's hands, completely changed. From that point forward, it was, they'd pick it up, they'd hold it, they go, "This is real." I go, "It always was." And then they'd start reaching out, and that led to a lot of opportunities like this, where I can just, hopefully get the opportunity to share a lot of information and get it out of my head and help as many people as I can,
But I do think that is fascinating about the idea that people don't take it seriously, and that that you can't, that everything's got some end goal to make money. Like even with How We Listen for us, it's like we came up with it because we got so pissed off with people, Spotify saying all you need to do is sort out a playlist, and we all know that's not true, and that's why we started it. And so I really sympathize with that idea that you're trying to do something because you think it's important, and you've got a burning sort of desire to help, or at least make it easier for other people, and then everybody's skeptical, and you think, I'm doing this because I want to help, not because I'm trying to generate leads. I think that's a fascinating story.
Yeah, and I mean, I can understand why. There's so many people out there that are asking artists to spend their money and telling them that they need to spend money on this and that. And it's like, okay, that doesn't interest me. Like, that's why I've always had a day job. And with the book, I mean, I'll be honest, I've never actually made money from it. When I make money, I reinvest it. So to show you, I paid the designer to create original artwork. She hand drew this on a tablet with a stylist. So each edition has its own unique artwork. And I paid her. And when the second edition came around, I made sure I paid her even more because of the success of the first one. And then I also paid editors, I paid copywriters, and I have to pay to set up the publishing and the ISBNs. And then once I made the money back on the second book, I went and booked a studio and did the audio book and put that out. Once I made the money back from that, now the Spanish version translation has been completed. So
really,
that's out now in digital, but I want to give it a few months to get the feedback to make sure that the translation was spot on and nothing was missed. And then that'll go to print as well. So, it's nice to do that and not feel like I need to sell something to get by, because, I can say yes to speaking opportunities that don't pay. And honestly, 95% of them don't pay. And, I just love doing it. So yeah, the book for me, I never really went, oh my gosh, this is going to mean that I don't have a job and I can just sit down and write. That was never the goal. It was just to get it out. And in all honesty, like, as you can tell from the cover, to get it out of my head and share it, because there's so many little things that it's assumed that we know. And a lot of it is overlooked and a lot of it is missed. And some people just don't see the value in some of these things that they can do because they don't know, well, that's an hour of my time. What do I get out of that? And so that was part of the reason behind it was, well, let me break it down and let me say that this is something you can do. All it's going to cost you is your time. It's provided directly from the platform, and these are the potential benefits that you can get from doing this. And over the years, it's grown so much with all the different things that all these platforms have brought forward that a lot of people have felt overwhelmed. So what now it's become, hey, I just want to make you aware of all of these things. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them. You can go through this and pick and go, that I can do, that I can invest a few minutes of my time and do, and I see the value in doing that. If you've got the time and the energy, do it all, of course. But
sorry to interrupt, but I remember when we chatted, you said that also, like, you didn't really want to write, is this correct, that you didn't want to really write an inspirational book? You wanted to get down into, like, okay, here's the stuff that, let's get down to business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just like, I mean, sure, a close friend might sit down, have a drink, and say, "Tell me your life story." But for everyone else, that's you know, for me, it was okay. You have to tell people what you've done to get you there, but then you need to open up and start sharing. Um, I didn't want it to be like, I've been very blessed. I haven't had challenges and things like that, so I don't have anything on that side of inspiration. And when there's been things that haven't worked out, I've just kept going. But I look at the book and I go, this is about the reader. This is about you. I care about you because you took the time to pick this up and you want to know what to do. And I just want to put it out. So that's why I think the intro page is like literally a page. And then it's like, let's get into it. If you want to know the story, ask. We'll sit down, we'll have a conversation sometime, but this book is about you.
Okay, so let's get down to that kind of stuff. So anybody who's got questions as we go, just throw them in the chat and I'll keep an eye out. But my first question is, what is the form? When we chatted, you kept banging on about the form, which sounds like this. It sounds like, okay, we're going to talk about the form. And I think it's the perfect place to start because when we chat, we only chatted for say 20 minutes and you must have referenced it 10 times. So explain what the form is.
Sure. And I'm just posting, well, I realized I didn't make them links, but I typed them into the chat to try and help. Yeah, so this comes up a lot in conversations. People are like, what is, in your opinion, the most important thing that you should do when you have an upcoming release? You've already uploaded the song to your distributor, you've set a release date. What should you do? And for me, obviously, I'm talking about the playlist side. There's social media, there's everything else, absolutely. But for me, I would say, well, number one, I would go to artists.spotify.com and artists.amazon.com. And there should be an option there that says you have an upcoming release, pitch it. And a lot of people have said, oh, I did that once and I didn't get a playlist, so I don't do it anymore. But there's so much more to this submission process, or these forms, if you will, than just getting on a playlist on release day. With Spotify, for example, you've probably noticed that they've gone in the direction of a lot of personalized playlists, and they've got their AI DJ X that is also just playing an endless stream of music and delivering it to the listener, ideally thinking that they know exactly what the listener is looking for. Now, going back to when you're filling out this submission form, they're asking you, what is the mood of the song? What is the genre? What are the instruments used? Where is the artist based, or where are all the people in the group based? They're asking a lot of information. That information is being attached to that song. Yes, it is being pitched for potential consideration on an editorial playlist by someone that works at Spotify or Amazon, but it's also allowing it to be delivered to people in their various endless listening modes, their radio stations, the AI DJ. And by filling out this form, you're making sure that that music is going to reach the right listener, as opposed to perhaps you have a pop song and they don't know that. So it starts to get delivered to people that listen to country music or hip hop or something, and it's not quite the right fit and it gets overlooked. The other thing with Spotify is if you fill out this form and you submit it at least 7 days before release day. So let's say right now, let's say it's a Friday and your song is coming out next week on a Friday. As long as you've submitted 7 days prior and it's a new song, it hasn't been released before and it's not a remix, it will go into the release radar playlist for everyone that is following the artist. So if you have 500 followers, that's 500 release radars. That's a win in itself because that's additional reach. Now with Amazon, if you're filling out that form in advance, one of their benefits is they'll send out a push notification to people that have notifications turned on in the Amazon Music app but they'll also send a notification if they have notifications enabled on their Alexa device in their home. Sorry, anyone, or their car even as well. And so, you know, just by filling out those 2 forms with a few pieces of information, you will potentially reach more people in various listening modes. You may get placed on playlists. You're going to get a push notification to people through Amazon Music. With Spotify, if it's an original, hasn't been released before, not a remix, it'll go into release radar for your followers. That's some definite wins that you can get just from filling out these forms. And the other thing I really want to add on Spotify is, so with my group, every time we release music, we always fill out these forms. We don't always get a playlist. Honestly, out of the, I want to say, it's 28 songs that we've submitted since Spotify opened up those submission forms over the years. I think 5 of those songs ended up in some form of an editorial playlist, which is still great. But had we stopped, we would have missed out on those opportunities. And the interesting thing is, the biggest driver of streams on Spotify for us is actually Discover Weekly, because a lot of our songs that we've submitted over time, by filling out all the correct information, have found their way into Discover Weekly, found their way to people that haven't yet heard that song or even heard our music. And to date, we've got about 1.5 million streams from Discover Weekly, whereas from all the editorial playlists that we've been on over the years, it's about 900,000 to 1 million streams. So Discover Weekly is actually the biggest driver for us. And I've seen that for a lot of other artists as well. And it's the most achievable by simply filling out that form in advance.
So like this form, has it grown in the type of questions that they ask? Because if it's gone from a world of more, data-driven playlists, is it because they're asking for more data, whereas playlists were more editorial before at the start, right? So has that been a shift where there, because I had never really thought, where are you from, all that kind of stuff that could actually be used to sort it, to push it to the right people. So is that what's happening, that they're asking for more and more information from the artist to achieve better results for themselves and less work ultimately for these platforms?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's these shocking, overwhelming numbers that are thrown out of how many songs are being released every day. And the reality is, not all of those songs are actually being submitted through these forms. So for lack of a better term, they're falling on deaf ears. They're not reaching anyone. And these forms have asked way more questions now than they ever have, with Spotify. And I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but when they first started, it was a few very basic questions, and then you would write your pitch, and that would be it. Whereas now, the mood, the instrument, the genre, they're very specific with the genres. It's no longer just, is this pop or dance or, very broad genres. They're getting very specific now. And I think that's been really helpful in making sure that it reaches the right listeners as well.
Let's do a couple questions, because there's a first, Kathy asked, what is an editorial playlist? And an editorial playlist is a playlist that's curated by a human, is the best way to say that, right?
Yeah, I would even go one step further, and I would say a human that works at that streaming platform. So on Spotify, they have today's top hits. Apple Music have Dance XL. And when you look at these playlists, it will have under it, it will say Spotify or Apple, and it will show that it's curated by the platform itself, which means that it's curated by people that actually work at that platform. So a lot of people pay attention to these, and they're always saying, I want editorial playlists because it has a human editor at the other end, and it has a large following. And ideally, they're hoping that it will help them reach a lot of people and get a lot more listeners as well.
Because some of these comments are also good to read aloud for anybody who's not listening live. So Consuelo says, my new release says not eligible to pitch on my Spotify profile. Is this because Spotify doesn't really have, doesn't have it yet. Brackets, DistroKid sent it to stores yesterday. Do you have any idea why it would say not eligible to pitch? Is it because maybe too late, or?
No, I wouldn't say too late. A couple of things come to mind because I've seen this before is Spotify will only allow you to pitch one release at a time. So let's say you've uploaded 3 or 4 songs and set future release dates and you've already pitched one. It will lock the others until that one is released.
Okay.
So they're really saying one at a time. Once that one that you've pitched is live, then you can go and pick another one and pitch that. That's the only reason I can think of. But if it's not that, then it may be if the song has been released previously, they may say this is not eligible because this song is already released. We recognize the ISRC, or we recognize the audio, and we know this song's already been released once before. So you can't release a song and then re-release that same song 6 months later and pitch that exact same song again, basically. It could be one of those two.
Yeah, and Nina in the chat backs it up. It can't be a remaster, so it just has to be never released before. So there are a couple interesting questions in here about people are asking about Amazon Music. Like, does anybody use Amazon Music or this kind of stuff? And Ivo says Amazon Music is relatively popular in Japan. What is your take on the idea that some people have these biases towards certain platforms? It's like, oh, like, why would anybody use Amazon Music? Or like, what's your take on all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, my take is that people are going to listen where they listen. And in different parts of the world, there's different platforms that may be more popular than they are where you are located. It doesn't mean that you need to go and subscribe with them and download their app and all of that. But at the very least, you should know that most of these platforms will provide tools for you as an artist for free without the need to subscribe, and regardless of where you are in the world. So one example here in the US, we have Pandora. It has been available in other countries previously, but now Pandora is US only. And a lot of people have said to me, oh, I don't pay attention to Pandora because it's not available where I live. And I say to them, well, you know that there's still 60 million active monthly users on there that you could be reaching, and they're all in the US. Are you trying to reach people in the US? And all of a sudden it clicks. And Pandora have their artist marketing platform known as AMP, where anyone around the world can sign up, and you can go in there and you can see how many people are listening to your music in Pandora. And you can also do things such as feature tracks where you could basically, and this is free, Pandora provide this direct. Essentially, you can flag a track, or I shouldn't say flag, that sounds bad, but you can choose a track to feature for up to 8 weeks. And you can do that for up to 6 tracks per year, which means 48 weeks out of the year, you can have a track featured on Pandora. And a featured track essentially means that they take it, someone listens to it, works out where it would best suit. They have up to 600 different ways that they can tag a song, so they can get very specific. If anyone wants to nerd out, Google the Genome Project, GENOME, and they'll do that. And then that song will start to get put in front of listeners on Pandora's radio programming, where, for anyone that's not familiar, Pandora is one of those platforms where a lot of people will just say, play music based on this artist or based on this song, and just keep going. And they'll give feedback, thumbs up, or they'll skip the song. And so Pandora is featuring your track amongst those radio programs and testing it out, seeing if people are listening, if people are giving it a thumbs up. And all of those streams come back to you. So I've seen people do this, and the form is literally choose a track, choose a start date, submit, and that's it. And you can start it as soon as the next day. And then what happens is you might get a few hundred streams during those 8 weeks. You could get a few thousand. There are stories of people getting in the hundreds of thousands, which is amazing. But, you know, to set something more realistic, most people I've seen get at least a few thousand streams per track from doing this. And it's provided directly from the platform, and it's free. It's like a discovery mode for Pandora, if you will.
but also, and if you're form adverse, it's a great place to start. Like, you know, if you get intimidated by filling out forms and you need to warm up a bit, Pandora is the platform for you.
Yeah. And I should say as well, and this is not just you know, of course I love Pandora in addition to the teams at the other platforms, but Pandora, when you go to the artist marketing platform, they have a chat button on there where you can actually send a message and you can email the team, and they host webinars twice per month on Zoom where anyone from anywhere around the world can join. And you can ask all the questions you want. And you've got people that are editors of the stations and playlists on there. You've got the artist and creative services teams. They actually say in the call, everyone post links to your music. Everyone tell us what you're excited about. And, you know, it's an opportunity for artists to be heard, but to also ask the questions. And so that's been really awesome to see, because over time, their audience has stopped being just US based artists and their teams through to people from all around the world. You know, there's people that will be tuning in at 2 o'clock in the morning because they want to be part of these webinars as well.
How long have they been doing? No, I've never even heard of that. That's it's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
But like, it's like none of the other platforms do that, right?
Not that frequently that I've seen.
That's great. So how often is it?
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's twice per month.
Wow.
And one of them, I'll see if I can find the links.
Let's get okay. Can someone else Google it? Anybody who's on the call?
Yeah.
We'll keep talking. Mike, I don't want you doing two things at once. So if anybody finds the Pandora call, we'll see what happens. So, but like there was another question here I want to get to before we move on. Does Amazon Music also push to AMP radio shows to encourage them to add it to their playlist?
Oh, so now we're talking, yeah. So this is where it gets tricky. So Pandora's artist marketing platform is known as AMP. And then separately, Amazon Music launched a new app called AMP, where people can host their own radio show and people can call in and they can play songs from a library of music that's available. As far as I know, it doesn't pull directly from the submission forms in Amazon Music for artists, but I'm not 100% confident on that answer, just to be clear. But I know that would definitely be a question for the distributor, whoever you're working with, just saying, is my music also being made available for Amazon Music's AMP app? Because it may be a separate check mark to just saying, distribute my music to Amazon Music. I'm sure there's different licensing and things like that come into play as well.
What I've got one more question because it's so left field.
Sure.
Do you have any information on accessing your artist profile on Tidal, as well as playlisting there?
Artist.tidal.com is live. Right now, there's two things on there. One is Tidal Rising, which I'll speak about in a second, because anyone can apply for that, and they've just started announcing it. But the other part of that is Tidal Artist Home is in beta right now, and I got the okay to say this, but it's coming in the next few weeks. So let's say mid-April, you should see some news where it opens up to more people. But essentially, once you log in, you'll be able to update your Tidal artist profile, add social media links, update your profile photo. I know this because I signed up for the beta, because I'm crazy for the beta. I sign up for all of these things. And excitingly, Tidal is really good at credits. So crediting producers, singer-songwriters, vocalists, engineers, everyone that wants to be credited for their contribution to a song. And they generate different pages or profiles for each person. You have an opportunity, there's a form in there, where you can directly specify, this song is not mine, or these songs are on another profile and they're actually mine. Can you show them on my profile? This person was a producer. Can you credit them on this song? And you can request to update all of that, which I think is a big step forward, because now it means that when people discover you on Tidal, they'll see a photo, there'll be links to your social media, there'll be information about you, and everything will be correct. They won't go and play a song that they're under the assumption is yours and it actually belongs to someone else. So artists.tidal.com is the website where that will be happening. And the thing that I mentioned before, Tidal Rising. So that's their own sort of artist program. And in previous years, it's been a very small number. It's been sort of a handful of artists that they've put forward. This year, they're doing this for hundreds of artists. So potentially between 200 and 300 artists can be chosen at any time. And you fill out a very short form. I gotta stop saying form. You fill out a very
it's brilliant.
Fill out
A
some
web
information
form. It's
about
a web
yourself.
form. It's a digital form. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. And essentially, you can find the information on the website, but there's different opportunities that it could lead to by being selected and being a Tidal Rising artist. It could be things such as the obvious ones are playlists and things like that. But there could be things such as creating original content, recording a live cover, recording a session. They could even send you to a studio, and there's even mention of them giving funding to artists. I don't know the level of what that looks like, but from what I have heard, it's just a case of how will you spend the money, not we're going to tell you how to spend it. So if an artist comes forward and says, if I had, let's just throw a number out, if I had $5,000, I could get this engineer and I could mix down these tracks and I could release them in, in Dolby Atmos. So it sounds its best on Tidal. There's an opportunity there as well. But I would encourage you to go and check it out at artists.tidal.com. The form is open to anyone that fills it out. I sent a few friends there recently and they went ahead and filled it out. So it's one of those things, you have to be in it to be considered for the opportunity. And they've opened it up to a lot more artists this year compared to previous years as well.
Okay, so I was thinking the question about the track being locked, I thought was super interesting, because what you said was, oh, like, you can only have one being presented until the release date. And it made me think about something else we talked about when we chatted, this idea of like if a lot of this is new to you, like, how do you develop more of a long-term plan? Because what I liked about what you were saying was that, like, it's not just release week, there's a lot you can do. And I think a lot of artists struggle with the idea of what does a plan look like? And I think that specific thing, that question shows that, oh, like, how should I plan out my releases, or what should I do? So I thought we could really spend more time on that. Like, when you talk about having some level of ambition and building some sort of plan, like, what do you talk about? Like, how do you tell people who are just starting out, this is the plan you should have? Or,
Well, I'm very careful about it, because if someone's just spent a long amount of time working on their craft and working on music, the last thing they want to hear is that they need to invest a ridiculous amount of time in promoting their music and planning for that release. But then the reality is you do need to invest some time to make sure it gets heard. So a lot of people have checklists online that they've made, and for me, I use the Reminders app on my computer and my phone, and I create a new to-do list so that each time there's a release, I'll have 8 weeks out, 7 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'll check the things off, because for me that works best and it's satisfying to check them off. And then anytime there's a new release, duplicate that list and start again. And add things as you learn them each time. For artists, there's a lot of the very simple things that have to, in my opinion, the most essential, such as submitting the release that is coming out in advance as early as you can, so that it has time to travel throughout the people at the platform and get every possible opportunity. And then, with social media, I'm not going to dive into that side too much in the interest of time. I feel like that's an entire conversation in itself. But, I will say that at the very least, just have a presence on these platforms. If TikTok, if you're not that comfortable on there, you can at least set up a profile and make sure that you've got the correct links on there, because once you link that to your music, Other people may start using your music in videos, and they'll come back to your profile and they'll follow your link and they'll listen to your music elsewhere. You know, some people like to spend more time on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. You know, everyone's going to have one platform that they prefer to spend their time on and invest their time on. And, you know, I think it's important at the start not to pressure someone and set these unrealistic goals, such as you need to post on Instagram 20 times per day to reach people and things like that, because that's terrifying. So, yeah.
But you mentioned like 8 weeks up front. I think you said, is that normally where you start with a track? Oh, okay, I'm 8 weeks out. I've got all the info together. Is that how early you like to start generally?
I mean, for me, that is ideal. But I also know that people get excited and they like to put it out as quickly as possible. So when I say 8 weeks, it usually means someone is going to meet in the middle and do 4 weeks. But, you know, the reason why I like the lead time is things go wrong. You know, things even go wrong after the release as well. But in the lead up, you know, you upload it, you get a message back, the artwork is not okay, you need to change this, you've got time to change it. You know, you need time from the moment you upload it before it shows in these tools for you to actually fill out the submission forms. It doesn't happen instantly. Sometimes it can take up to 1 week. So for me, the lead time is just me being extra cautious and then having time to check things along the way and make sure that everything is done. And if something doesn't go right, I've got time to fix it and I'm not scrambling last minute to fix something.
So like, so I upload my music and then I can start filling out these forms as early as I want. Because I think that's the other challenge for someone newer, that they can't remember all that. And that's what shows like how important your job is like, you know, all this stuff by heart to a certain extent, or you have them in lists. Like, are all the platforms the same where you can basically start getting all the stuff organized as early as you want?
Yeah, I mean, the only limitation based on what you said is, let's say I uploaded a new song today to my distributor and I set it for release date in the future. I wouldn't see that song available in Amazon Music for Artists, Spotify for Artists until possibly this time next week, because it takes time to get delivered to them, for them to ingest it, them to match it to you, and then to show it in their backend tool where you can go in and pitch that. Actually, I just saw a question come in. Do you mind if I just jump on this as well?
Go for it.
It relates to what we're saying.
Yeah.
So the question was, can any of these things be done after the release? So, you know, let's say you're watching this and you just released a song earlier this week or late last week. In some cases, you can. So with Amazon Music for Artists, you can fill out that submission form up to 2 weeks after a song has gone live. And with Pandora, the featured tracks that I mentioned, to feature a track, it just has to be released within the last year. So if you have a song that you released 6 months ago, you still can go in and feature that track in Pandora now. And I've seen some people even do things where they've released a song that relates to a specific holiday, you know, for example's sake, let's say Christmas. And this year, they're actually featuring the track in the lead up because it's still within that 12-month period of when it was first released. So they're able to do that to give it a second chance at reaching more listeners this year. So some are, you know, they're two things that you can do if you've just released something or after it's been released. Spotify, at the moment, you can only fill out the submission form prior to the release going live.
And if anybody has a comment about these forms, any mistakes they've made filling out the forms, throw it in the chat, because I'm curious. Everybody's made a mistake, so I'm curious to know what the most common mistakes are. So if you've got this 2-month timeline, we're working through all these forms. Let's talk more about once it's out and you're like, it hasn't, I've done all this stuff and I haven't sort of gotten as many streams as I was hoping for. Like, how do I think long term when I think I don't know what I'm doing? Like, what would be the next steps after release should I be planning another single right away to try it all again? Or is there other stuff I can be doing to get things going? Or
Yeah, I think the most important thing is don't be disheartened. Um, a lot of people think that if something doesn't happen over the course of the first few days, that it just isn't going to work and that's it, and they should move on to the next one. But the reality is more and more now with music, it's getting discovered months, sometimes years after it was first released. So you should continue to be just as proud of that song regardless, because it may just take time to reach the right ears. At the streaming platforms, sadly, there's been a number of people that have lost their jobs, which means there's less people that have time to listen to the music, to place it in these playlists, to reach people, which means that it's taking longer than normal. So some playlists aren't being updated as frequently. Some playlists are relying on that information that you fill in the forms to slowly feed it out to people and find the right audience. I've seen artists where 6 months or 1 year later, that song that they put out, they've released 4 more since, and finally that song clicked. It could have went into Discover Weekly. It could have ended up in a playlist. It definitely doesn't happen in the first few days anymore. The only ones that are guaranteed to update every Friday are the New Music Friday playlists, of course. So, yeah, I think that artists now need to, I definitely avoid watching the numbers in the first few days, especially if you think that is going to help you to think that, the song is on the right path or not, because honestly, the first few days doesn't mean anything anymore. People don't immediately rush to their streaming apps every Friday to hear new music. They'll listen to it when they have time. They'll listen in their own time. So,
and if it bubbles up in the right way based on all the information they're going to find out about it. Like that's a super interesting comment. It's like people will get to it in their own time if they know that it was released, which goes back to all the work you could do yourself to encourage that to happen.
Yeah. There's been a lot of conversations recently where I've seen artists going, hey, that song you released 3 months ago, there's still people that don't know it exists. It's okay to tell them about it. It's they're still excited. For me personally, when I first hear a song, it doesn't matter if it was released today or 1 year ago or 10 years ago. It's new to me the moment I first hear it, and that's the same for fans. So I want artists to stop thinking that once the song is out, they should stop talking about it. They should always be talking about it and be proud of it and continue to tell people. We need to get out of this mentality that as soon as the song is released, it's old news. That's not the case. As soon as it's out, we should be talking about it even more and telling people about it and sharing it and celebrating it. Yeah.
I've got a couple questions that Consuelo asked about. Any advice on doing DIY marketing or hiring a marketing and PR company? Which I think is an interesting question. But then, we also talked when we chatted before about streaming fraud. And the question is, it's like, I've put out a track myself a couple times, whatever. I'm making this up. I've never released anything. And I've tried a couple things and it sort of worked. And I know that I can go get help elsewhere. And that's what Consuelo's question is. It's like, how do I find, what is the right help? How do I get from me doing everything myself to putting a little more, it could be money, or it could be finding people who are willing to help. That's, I think, a big struggle when an artist is trying to think long-term. It's like, how do I figure out how to advance? So, and there are pitfalls in that. And so hopefully you can answer some of the questions I've loosely asked.
Yeah. It's, no one should care about your music more than you do. The artist should be their own biggest fan first and foremost, because it's impossible to expect someone else for a paycheck to care about your music as much as the person that created it and put their whole heart into it. And the reason why I talk to artists about, do it yourself is because in the start, there's not money coming in to just go and hire someone to do these things for you and things like that. So that's why I try to, help identify some easy, low-hanging things that the artists can do themselves. But then from that point, some artists may go, hey, I have someone I know that really likes my music. I'm going to teach them what I've been doing, and I'm going to pay them to do it, and I'm going to make them part of the journey. And the artists essentially build their own team. The other side is, there are PR companies out there, and they could secure different things for you. They could secure press. There's people out there that can pitch your music for radio. There's people out there that can pitch your music for playlists. There's a lot of different things. But I guess without saying that you shouldn't engage in them, I would say that finding one that is the right fit, I would ask a lot of questions, and I wouldn't ask questions just of that person that you may be engaging with for services. I would ask people that have worked with them. One thing I like to do is I'll go on Reddit and I'll just see if anyone has mentioned an experience. And of course, some aren't helpful, but some might be very detailed. And it gives you an idea of the expectations of what you might be getting into and what you might actually see in return. And asking other artists, if they've had a bad experience, they're going to tell you. If they've had a good experience, they're going to tell you. So definitely asking those questions before engaging is important, because some of these are very expensive. And I know artists that have gone and just were under the assumption that if I take a few X $1,000s and take out a loan or put this on my credit card, this person is going to do everything I need, and I'm going to start making all this money from my music, and I'm going to tour. And the reality is that's most likely not going to happen, unfortunately. You might find some new fans. Absolutely. It might lead to some opportunities, and long-term that might start to benefit you. But yeah, I definitely want to discourage anyone from just going straight and thinking that giving someone their money is going to make all their dreams come true. Definitely ask questions, and don't hesitate to ask, because there's always someone that's going to be happy to tell you about their experience, whether it was good or bad.
So do you have any advice then on if you're in that middle ground, you want to do more, you've maybe done some research, you realize, okay, this is too big a step for me to spend money. Like, do you have any tips for reaching out to people? Like the advantage of streaming platforms is they've standardized that process. And I think that's very good, and it's very positive, and it's a good first step in understanding it's an artist's job, or someone who works with the artist, to get the right information to the right people at the right time. But there's all these other things, like you mentioned, social media, and then there's radio, everything else. Like, what do you think about reaching out to other people, and do you suggest that? And what do you know of anything that sort of worked? Like examples, maybe?
Yeah, if we're talking about, keeping on playlists, of course, and reaching out to other people about playlists. We talked about editorial, curated by humans that work at the streaming platforms, but there's so many other types of playlists that exist on there. There's user-created playlists, which basically means, one of us, myself or Mark, if we have a public profile and we have a playlist that we've created and we've made public, people might come and listen to it. They might discover music on there, and it might start to get popular and could help a lot of artists and generate some streams. An example on how people have successfully reached out regarding those over the years in Spotify. When people sign up for Spotify, there is an option to log in with Facebook. And in some cases, that means that the profile picture from the Facebook profile matches the profile picture on the user profile in Spotify. Otherwise, you could just take a screenshot, upload it to Google image search. But this sounds kind of stalkerish, but I just want to add onto this.
Yet somewhat effective, though. I hate to say it. That's called a hack. That's a hack.
Yeah. And I do want to add that, it's as long as it's a public profile, and it's a public image, which of course it is if in this case. But with respect to the person, I would search for them on different forms of social media and make sure that they have a public profile that looks like they're open to being reached out to. You know, if you go to their Instagram and it's set to private and they have 20 followers, probably not the right place. You go to Twitter and they're public and they're active on their different story, you know, they're going to be more open to that. So that's one way of finding people that curate these user created playlists. And then the other side is brands. And one example I like to use from personal experience is Starbucks. So, you know, this was on Twitter and this was many years ago, but this still exists now. So Starbucks have obviously their main account or their main profile, which has a large amount of followers. But I found that there was a separate account, which was at Starbucks Music, with a much lower amount of followers. And I looked into it and I was like, they used to have a record label. They used to release CD compilations and sell them in Starbucks restaurants. They still have a few people that curate the music for their locations. So I turned on notifications so that anytime at Starbucks Music tweeted, I would get an instant notification on my phone. And so I started to recognize when they were active. And then the next time I knew they were about to be active, I sent them a DM. And surely enough, within the hour, I got a response. And I was able to reply back and send them a song. And then I didn't know who I was sending it to, of course, but then I found out a few weeks later that our song was on the Starbucks Coffee House on Spotify. And we were starting to get a significant amount of streams from that. And so then I went on LinkedIn and I went to Starbucks and I put in the keyword music in the search. And I found 2 people that I think may have been responsible for it. So I just sent a very nice, very short message saying, hey, I just wanted to thank you. And I'm not sure if you're the right person, but we had this song placed on the Starbucks Coffee House playlist. Surely enough, one of them responded and they were so happy to hear it and got a direct email address, and moving forward was able to email music directly to them. And that came from just simply finding the Twitter account, turning on notifications and working out when they tweet and then sending a DM.
That's pretty advanced. That's pretty, I'm very impressed with that. But I think that the spirit behind that is good for everybody to think about, this idea that, okay, like you just need to find out who's doing stuff and be mindful that there's somebody else at the other end, and be mindful that they're not around all the time. That idea that you figured out when they're around, I think is very important, because not everybody's sitting there waiting for your email or your DM or your tweet or whatever. And so I think that's a really impressive story, and that people do actually want to hear from you if you frame it in the right context, I think is probably a good learning from that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, fortunately the reach out on LinkedIn, and I encourage everyone to really pay attention to LinkedIn, because people are very open to hearing from you on LinkedIn versus other platforms where they have a more private profile. And, you know, the message was a thank you first and foremost. Like, who doesn't want to be thanked? Like, but, you know, on the other side, just to add a different strategy and another way to sort of get someone's attention is, I've always encouraged artists to create their own playlist. Place your music in there, but place music that works from similar artists. And not only that, start telling them that you've done it, because a lot of artists have their own playlist now, or, you know, they may, an artist that set up their own record label have a playlist for that as well. And so what happens is, all of a sudden, you're now reaching out to another artist and saying, hey, just letting you know that I added your song to this playlist and here is the link. All of a sudden, you're just delivering good news. And then when they respond, a lot of the times I've found they'll say, hey, thank you so much. I just looked at your profile. I see you do music too. You know, feel free to send me anything you've got. I have a playlist as well. And I've seen artists do this and it's actually led to collaborations, creating a song together. It's led to some artists going on tour together. It's led to a lot of opportunities, even some great friendships, just from one person being the first one to do something to help the other. And then it was reciprocated. So, and, you know, just to add on to that, you know, it's all well and good to have the playlist on one platform, you know, whether it's Apple, Spotify, whatever you use. But what I did was I went one step further and I used a tool. At the time, this tool doesn't exist anymore, but at the time it was called Sounds Good. But now I use a tool called Soundies, and I'm going to type it in the chat. And what that does is it takes one playlist on one platform. So let's say, you know, Mike's favorite tunes on Spotify, and it replicates that playlist on multiple other platforms. So that exact playlist will also be available on Apple, Amazon, YouTube Music, Deezer, Angami, JioSaavn, platforms you've never even heard of, Pandora. The list goes on. And all of a sudden, you're not just saying, I added your song to this playlist, here's a link. You're like, I added your song to this playlist. Here's a smart link with 20 links to the playlist on all of these different platforms. And that's blown people's minds because they're like, this is crazy. I've never been on a playlist on Deezer before, and now I am. You know, I've never even heard of Angami before, and now I'm on a playlist on there. You know, so there's little things like that, you know, have been extremely rewarding because you're helping others, and in turn, you'll find that people are more open to helping you as well. And also, I mean, if you've got similar artists that you're putting in that playlist, and they're sharing that with their fans, you're potentially reaching more people, more fans that would be interested in your music, and all of the related artists and fans also like, ideally will start populating with the right artists over time from that playlist and from those listeners. So
I'm just posting in the chat to back that up. This is a playlist by this guy named Fortet, who's a British electronic producer, a musician, and he has his own playlist. And so he posts all his own stuff in it, but all other tracks he likes, and not even just only new tracks, tons of old stuff. And I live by it. Like, I even have a playlist of its tracks that I've saved from his playlist. So he's very big, and you know, but there's a lot of, like, and I think that's totally legit. Like, it's not, you don't feel as cynical about it in the sense that it's not all an algorithm. So I think it's that kind of stuff, that there are people out there posting music that they like. And if you share similar tastes, or make the same kind of music, or are on the same label, or come from the same city, there's like loads of those opportunities. And I think that's a good way, like you said at the start, where you played all the venues in your town. There's like loads of people around you and around the kind of music you make. And that's the best place to start. So I think it's all super good advice. But we've been on for a while, but should we answer some of there were some questions. Should we do one last round of questions?
Sure.
T. Peters, at 19 minutes past the hour. Hello, T, from London. I don't know if you see that one, Mike. I run a small label of talented musicians, similar genres. 5 placements on editorial playlists. I'm currently trying out hiring different distributors to see what they can have other than playlists. Yeah, like, what are the unique selling points if you're trying to up your distributor? What are the things you should be looking for, do you think?
Sure. So, you know, just to go back to what we said earlier, there's different types. So there's just straight distribution, which is, once again, CD Baby, DistroKid, TuneCore, etc. You know, you pay a monthly or yearly fee, or you pay per release. They take your music, they put it into the stores, and for the most part, that's the extent of it. There's nothing else on top. And then there's others, such as, you know, out of fairness, mentioning Videa, The Orchard, Believe, of course, where I work. that will do additional services on top. Usually they'll take a percentage, but it's not like a major record label deal percentage, but they'll take a percentage so that they're invested in your music. And then they'll do the pitching, which of course you're already doing those pitches using the forms yourself, but they'll do additional pitches which will complement those, where they'll do that through their reps or their partners that they have at the streaming platforms. So it's almost like saying, hey, you've already received this pitch from the artist. We just wanted to add some extra things on top of that. Here's some additional assets, some extra information, some extra marketing drivers, things that they couldn't put in that form, and, you know, giving it an extra opportunity in that way. But beyond just reaching out for playlists, there's other opportunities there. You know, I mean, the ones like what you saw with Tidal Rising, some of the other streaming platforms from time to time may have programs like that. YouTube did one last year where they were basically paying artists to post shorts videos for up to 8 or 10 weeks. And there's different opportunities that can come up from time to time where the artist may get a direct payment in return for doing things with the platform. There could be a collaboration with the platform across social media. It could be a live stream that happens. It could be creating original content for them, going in the studio and recording a song that gets released on that streaming platform. It's changing constantly right now because there's so many different tools that are coming. A lot of people are really focused on the live streaming element, but in addition, also bringing more video content into the streaming platforms as well. So, you know, it really is a full-time job staying on top of all of that. And artists get access to a lot of it directly, but a lot of these distributors have partnerships with the streaming platforms where they may get access to additional tools as well that will ultimately benefit the artist.
I think the one thing I would also think on that question is like, as an artist or as a record label, you need to have some experience and some knowledge of what works for you already. Because I think going to a distributor or trying to find anyone to help you, you want people that can help double down on the things that work for you. So maybe most of the things that you mentioned wouldn't be right for a certain artist because they're mostly focused on something else. And I think that's another way to look at it. Don't be so worried about what everything that the distributor is offering. Do they have the things that you need? If that makes more sense.
Yeah. I would also say it comes down to relationship. You know, you're going to be working very closely with a person or multiple people and meet them, get to know them. Do they seem like you would want to work with them ongoing? I probably should have worded that better, but you know what I mean? It all comes down to relationships as well. You want to know that there's a person that's going to pick up the phone when you need them, that's going to answer those questions, that genuinely cares about you and is focused on your growth. Because it is like going into a relationship. In most cases, you'll be signing on for, you know, a few years as well. And so you're committing to each other. So you want to make sure it's the right fit before you go ahead and do that. So, you know, I've said this a few times in the conversation, but ask all those questions. And it's always easier to ask those questions before committing to something than it is after.
And don't rush.
No.
Like everybody, you know, what I like about you is you said, I like to start 2 months up front, but I know people get excited because that is exactly what happens. People get so pumped up, they want to get on with it. But I think it is super important to be thinking, okay, is this the right decision for me? So we should do last call for questions here. Is there anything else that you want to?
Actually, yeah, I saw one from Evo about the Spotify's new user interface. So for anyone that hasn't seen it or isn't familiar, Spotify changed the look in the app. And so some people compare it to like a TikTok scrolling experience now. And, you know, I mean, my personal thoughts, for me, I like it because when I open the app, I want to find something that interests me very quickly and then go with it. And so the way that it looks is you have videos in some cases, and I'll touch on that in a second. And as you're scrolling, it will just start playing audio clips of that song or that album or that playlist. And if you see a playlist, you can skip through and get previews of a few songs to see if that's something you want to listen to. And then you just go for it. You know, it's not intended for you to be sitting there scrolling endlessly as such. It's to get you to what you want, and then you just let it play. So for that reason, I'm enjoying it so far. I know it kind of, anytime there's a big change like that, everyone's like, well, hang on a minute, slow down. This looks different now. But for me, I like that because it's great for getting to something that interests me and then leaving me be. But one thing I will say on it is because it's so visual, it's encouraging people to actually look at the screen, which people tend to do less now when they're listening to music because we've got headphones, we've got smart speakers, we can use our voice to request music. To know that people are looking at the screen, it's extremely important to do things such as upload a Spotify canvas. And for anyone that's not familiar, a Spotify canvas is a up to 8-second vertical video that fills the screen on the mobile phone app and loops. Because as people are scrolling, if you've got something that catches their eye, in addition to catches their ears, you might keep their attention long enough for them to actually go, I want to listen to this. So I know a lot of people originally were like, oh, Canvas looks cool, but how many people are actually tapping in the bottom left corner on the app to see that? Now it's right there in the feed. It's very prominent. So, and I can't say this on behalf of anyone, but my experience looking at it is that majority of the things I'm seeing when I scroll are moving and they're not just static artwork, which says to me, maybe having a looping visual is going to give you the advantage in discovery on that feed as well.
And I think, I don't know if you know that woman, Amber Horsberg, she's from Australia.
Yeah.
She was the one, she did one of our How We Listen interviews years ago, and she talked about it like Spotify being a spreadsheet of names. Like it's just, it's how do you stick out? Like it's such and it is true. It's just loads of text. And that Canvas thing is exactly what you're saying, that if there's something, that anything that just grabs someone's attention, we're very visual people. Everybody loves Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So what you're saying makes complete sense, that, like just giving someone some sort of vibe before they even hear the music or in tandem with the music is a great suggestion. But yeah. Consuelo's asked it about, I think she's saying that Spotify they get rejected, their canvases. Mine gets rejected when I use videos from a mobile phone. You ever heard anything like that?
No, I mean, they are kind of specific with the format of the video. And I have found that there's sometimes where I've created one and I've gone to upload it and it's rejected the format. So then I've had to go and open, I mean, on my Mac, it's iMovie or whatever you've got as far QuickTime or something like that, or even there's probably some free converters online that you can use where you could just upload and convert to the correct file format, because I noticed that they only accept one video file format. And I think it might actually be different from the one that comes from videos taken from your phone, which is a little bit tricky. I can understand that. That might be what's happening there. I've just gotten so used to just converting things to make them work that I think that's what's happening there.
Well, maybe we should wind it down because we've been on for a while. But I love all these questions. I wanted to stop with the thing about the Canvas things because that was you showcasing your love of new features. And I wanted to end on a high with this thing where you did a deep dive on a new feature and exactly what you liked about it, and then cut it off right there. But
and then we went into troubleshooting.
Yeah, exactly. Now that we let the air out of the tire a bit. Okay, Consuelo, you have one last question. Go for it. Oh yeah, music data. Sorry, we didn't answer that. This is the second time you've asked that. Earlier on, Mike talked about data that music supervisors want to hear about. Did you mention that?
Yeah. So when I mentioned with my work at Chartmetric and the different people I spoke with, I did mention music supervisors. So this may be a surprise to some, but the main things that they were focused on, I won't say where they were from, just out of respect, but they were looking at social media followings of artists and the genres that they fell within, and not so much how large their following was, but where their audience was based and the demographic. So they were going very specific on, let's look at artists that have a song that falls within this genre, that are actively releasing music, they're continuing to release music, and majority of their audience perhaps identifies as female between the ages of 15 and 30, and has these interests in common for the majority of them. And that has actually been one way that they've been able to find music for placements, because yes, they need the right song for the right moment in the right TV show or film, but wouldn't it be great if that song was connected to an artist that had a similar audience? Because then they're ultimately benefiting each other on both sides. The artist is reaching the audience of that program, and those that watch that program are reaching the artist.
And I think that's another argument for having an understanding of who you're trying to reach as an artist, knowing what you're trying to do and knowing where you're popular and all that kind of stuff. Because if people are asking those questions more and more, not just how many of X do you have, but more where are they and who are they? And it helps you market even better. Just back to there, we could go. This is a smooth ending. We can go back to the form. We can go back to the form that information about colorful information about who you are, where you're from, what you do, all those kind of things, what kind of music you make is becoming more and more important, because people want a bigger story to tell, not just how big or small are you, how long's the record been out. It's people are willing to give things a chance if they can learn more about them in some way. So anybody releasing music needs to have access to as much information about themselves as possible. How's that for a smooth ending?
I love it.
Okay, great. Well, look, thanks so much. And thanks everybody for coming. Like, I love these ones where the questions are brilliant like this. So thanks everybody for all your comments. And it was great to talk. And I thought it was quite inspirational. I know that you don't put yourself as an inspirational guy, but I think, you know, DIY is not something that people talk about enough. And I think it's super important, and do it yourself is a way of getting things done. And I think you've shown that, Mike. So I really appreciate you being here. So thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and thank you for the invitation. And I see all the comments on the side. Is there a way to save these so I can go through them after as well?
Yeah, Jamie normally saves them. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, I can send you the chat file, Mike.
Yeah.
And if I missed anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on pretty much every social
internet.
Media.
You're on the internet.
My handle is at Ask Mike Warner, like ask me a name, ask me a question. God. But I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram at this time, but I am on TikTok, Twitter, all the rest. You know, I kind of need to show up, but yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to hear from you, and I love to stay connected.
All right. Thanks a lot. And thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure. Thanks for coming, T. It was great to see you. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you all.
Later.